Okay, so welcome to the Scituate Candidates Forum. For tonight, we're going to, each person's going to have about 3 minutes to talk about themselves or whatever you want the residents to know, and then we'll ask a few questions, and then hopefully be out in time to catch the end of the basketball game. And, but if you have any questions in the meantime, let me know. So we'll just start down the line, it's just easier. So the first person up would be Maura Curran.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Linda, and I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. Even though all the races are uncontested, it's a great opportunity for us to get in front of the public. So thank you, and thank you for your commitment to that. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Maura Curran. I am the current chair of the Board of Selectmen, and I am finishing up my final term. I started in 2014 in a special election and then ran again in 2015. So I'm really excited to continue my service and have an opportunity to be re-elected back into office. The reason why I'm continuing to do so is there's a lot more left to be done. And I want to be a part of that and make sure we can get some good things finished, such as ongoing water and sewer issues in town. We have some infrastructure improvements that I really want to be a part of the solution there and improving those. The Senior Center, obviously, we're very happy and pleased that that's moving forward. So I'm committed to getting into not only the next step, but also to succeeding at the ballot and helping the seniors see this dream come to fruition. It's really important for our town. And one issue that really resonates pretty strongly with me, and I think it's because of the recent winter storms, is our coastal resiliency and our plans for it. We have a great relationship with the state. I think we need to elevate our relationship with the federal government because we obviously need some help with that. So I'm very committed to seeing through those 4 issues and all the other issues moving forward. And I've been really honored to serve the residents of Scituate. And I hope you will come out and vote for me, even though I am the only person on the ballot. It's really encouraging and it helps to see your support. So I appreciate you taking the time on Election Day to come out and support me. And I'd be honored to continue for the next 3 years.
Thank you.
I should have thanked the crowd for coming. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Linda, Jean, thank you for doing this. My name is Kathleen Curran. I'm the town clerk. I've been in the town clerk's office since 2006. I was assistant since 2008, and in 2012, I was elected town clerk after the retirement of Bernice Brown. This is my 3rd term for election, and I look forward to continue serving the town. I enjoy my job. It's challenging every day. Something comes in that's different. We have new laws that are up at the legislature now. One of them perhaps is the same-day voter registration. There's an early voting in legislature for primaries, which at the beginning of early voting, which the first year we did early voting was at the presidential election in November of 2016, and they promised us that we would not be doing early voting for primaries because the crowd or the attendance isn't as prevalent, let me say. But they are considering it in the legislature now for the Labor Day weekend, September 4th primary. We would be doing early voting Monday through Friday, the week before Labor Day. So that's something that is in discussion now. And obviously there's a little disagreement about that going on amongst the town clerks and city clerks, but we'll see how that all turns out. But I do love my job. I love the whole government and the inner workings of the town. Very interesting, very challenging. Every day something different comes in, like I said before. But I look forward to serving this term. And to reiterate what Maura said, even though this ballot is unchallenged, please come and vote. You know, come in and see the workings of the election if you like. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm also the election commissioner. So we set up and do the breakdown and the numbers and all that at the end of the day. We do have earlier polling hours because it's an unchallenged ballot. So the poll hours for the May 19th town election are 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. All right. And if you have any questions, feel free to call my office.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you for those who have come out tonight. I'm Carol Sullivan Hanley, and I'm running for my third term as library trustee. I've lived in Scituate for 31 years and have had other town involvements, the Historical Society and the Animal Shelter, and I'm also on the West Cork Scituate Sister City project. So when I decided to run 6 years ago, I talked to Kathy Meeker about it, and so two men, Les Ball and Skip DeBrusque, said, "Who's this Carol Sullivan Hanley?" And Kathy looked at her watch and said, "Wait 5 minutes, she'll be in," because I love the library and live there. I grew up, my mother was a librarian in Arlington. That was my first job as a teenager. Through college, it was always my work-study position, and I am truly dedicated and devoted to libraries. And I think this time around, it's so much more than books and DVDs. It's an opportunity for art to be shown, for amazing programs. It's very much a community center. I'm a teacher. This is my 40th year in education. Note the gray hairs and wrinkles. And on the first day that the library was open, I finished teaching and just stood in the lobby and watched people's reaction, and I had tears. It was really, it was amazing to see people, that it was finally done, and that it was just as beautiful as we had planned. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hi, my name is Patricia Lambert, and I am running for Planning Board. Presently, I'm the alternate member on the Planning Board. I'm proud to say I sit between two library trustees. I am a retired library director, so it's nice to see that the libraries are still being supported, and it is a beautiful library. I love being on the Planning Board, and I love being retired and being on the Planning Board, because the Planning Board is a full-time job. We have to make sure that everybody pays attention to zoning bylaws, subdivision bylaws. We take it upon ourselves to visit every site that comes before us. And we have a pretty restrictive view as to how to look at these projects, which is by the bylaws that you, the citizens, vote in, and that we have to adhere to. I love politics. It was a hobby. Now it is almost like a vocation. And I look forward to serving Scituate. I've been here since 1969, I think. So I've seen this town change in a lot of ways, and a lot of people do not like change, and change is really good, and we have to embrace change. But I think what we need to talk about is a sustainable Scituate along with the smart growth in Scituate, and that's going to be the focus that I'm going to bring to the Planning Board. And I'm going to say what everybody else says, it's unchallenged, but please come out and support the democracy. Please come and give a vote. Thank you.
First of all, my name is Pat Murphy, and I'd like to thank the board, the Chamber of Commerce, for putting this on this evening. My husband and I have lived here in Scituate since 1979. We've raised our family here. As a matter of fact, we live in a house that has been in my husband's family since the 1930s. I know that doesn't give me townie status by any means, but I hope that our longevity here in town counts for something. Libraries have been very important in my life and in our children's lives. I am a retired school teacher. I taught at Gates Intermediate School for 19 years, and I was in the English department there. I retired 5 years ago, and now my duties include taking care of 5 grandchildren, 2 of whom live here in Scituate, and and are regular visitors to the library, as my children were when they were younger. They became regular visitors at the library when Mrs. Finnegan was the librarian there. All of our children went through the public schools here, K through 12, and I should say that they're pretty successful in their field of endeavors, partly due to the library. Spent many an hour driving kids to the library, taking them actually up to Hingham to the library before we had the databases that were online that we have today. My first recollection of a library was when I was a little girl, and we had a one-room library, which was probably smaller than this room here. And that's where I began my love of libraries, checking out Nancy Drew books with my mother. So as I say, libraries are an important part of our community besides our natural resources that we have here. I think the library and our public schools are very, very important to our community. And I look forward to representing the community on the Board of Trustees of the library. Likewise, look forward to representing the library trustees in the community. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so before I begin, we knew we were going to have a light crowd tonight, not only because the race is uncontested, but since we've been afforded the luxury of having the forums videotaped and then played on Scituate TV, we've seen the attendance drop drastically because people can stay home and watch it in their own convenience. Plus, you got sports and other things. So we did the chamber solicited questions from, pretty much anybody we bumped into, and the Pizza Palooza was very helpful with that. So these questions did come from various residents in town, and I have a few questions. Some will be directed just to one particular position, and others will be a crowd question. So the first question is directed to the selectman, Maura. So what are you looking for in the new Senior Heritage Community Center? And kind of how do you propose paying for it? What are you willing to do to maybe give tax relief to the residents? What kind of, areas of funding do you think you could grab money from, things like that?
Sure. The senior center, I think with the location that we chose, however controversial it was and may still remain, I think the site at Gates really gives us the opportunity to combine a lot of the services that we so dearly need, which is not only those primarily for the seniors, who, as we know, the population is growing and is projected to be about 30% of our total population by, I want to say, 2030. So that's quite an uptick in the number of services that the town's going to need to render. So my vision, and I'm one of a 5-member board, and these are things that will all be worked out in the next couple of months should I be reelected, to have an opportunity to do that. My vision is that we have a senior center, recreation up there, as well as possibly build in a new cable studio that is needed, and take it the greatest advantage that we can of that space while being conscientious to the costs, obviously. The board has, made a commitment that we don't want to see an exaggerated solution, if you will, but we want the appropriate solution. So we want to make sure that it's a solution that can be expandable and grow as our senior population grows. To talk about funding, so there will be some things that will impact that. Once we work with the architects to determine what is the most cost-effective portion of the site to take down, what can we retain. There's a lot of desire on my behalf, as well as some other board members, to retain the look and, if possible, the facade, because we recognize that the look and feel of that center around the center in the Lawson area is very important to a lot of residents here, and it's a very emotional attachment. So our goal is to, if we can keep part of that center building, we will do that. If we can't, it's too costly, we will evaluate that, and we'll discuss it very openly with everyone, because this will be a very engaged process. There are a lot of things at play. So I envision really not just a senior center, but a community center that encompasses the recreation there, so seniors, we can tap into the gym that's there, we can tap into the use of the field in the back or the side, the tennis courts that are there, and really leverage some of those resources that are already there, which will help, I think, with the costing as well. As far as paying for it, I think we really need to take a hard look at all the opportunities. So number one, a lot of folks don't know that Senator O'Connor submitted the senior center to the governor's bond bill for capital improvements. So he submitted a $2 million request. So passing this at town meeting was a phenomenal first step, which definitely, signifies to the governor that Scituate is committed to this project. So we're hoping that it's a long shot, but we've got it in there and we've got a good relationship. So not that we're counting on it, but we're hoping to get that $2 million to certainly offset any costs. Secondly, if there's any improvements to the recreational aspect of it, or if there's a historical aspect to the Gates building that could be rendered, we could then tap into CPC funds. So we're already taxed annually 3% of our tax bills for CPC projects. So there's money in there that we also could identify and utilize as well. And then I also think that we need to take a serious look at CPC. It's been a terrific resource for us. It's 3%. We have an option of bumping that down to 1.5%. If we bump that down to 1.5%, it gives our taxpayers a little bit of relief as there's no way to get around borrowing money to pay for the senior center. I don't know what that number will be, but it certainly will be a good amount that we will have to borrow. So my goal is to mitigate that borrowing with all these other avenues, to socialize the potential of reducing CPC to 1.5%. I mean, we've allocated over $21 million to open space, recreation, historical, and affordable housing through that 3% tax since 2003. So it's been a great resource. But I think it may be time to shift priorities a little bit and be mindful of all that we've accomplished, not eradicate it completely, but take it down a level and still keep it at the 1.5% so we still have that bucket to work with and continue to work on different projects and give taxpayers a little bit of relief as we work toward identifying funding sources for the center.
All right. The next question would be to one of both the library trustees. Do you think the library should have Sunday hours for the entire year, not just the school year?
Well, Pat, do you mind if I?
No, I don't mind at all.
Okay. There has, the short answer is no. And that's mostly because of the need and the numbers that time from October to the end of April is when students are needing it. Perhaps September to June, that if people are requesting that, from what I understand, folks are satisfied with that, and that was decided upon, that those were the times that were in high demand for Sundays.
Not having been, having participated in any of these discussions, I do know that our library is open for 63 hours a week,
Yes.
Which is really quite remarkable for a small library. And I personally think that it is used most often, as Carol says, during the school year on Sundays, when kids need to go in and use the library for projects and all kinds of work like that. So I don't know financially whether it could be feasible to do that, to keep it open for that amount of time, for more on a Sunday. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could?
Yes, it would.
Yes.
Okay, planning board. Do you think the town should put a building moratorium in place given the shortage of water and sewer capacities?
A building moratorium. I know that has been done in the past, and the town doesn't have the power to do that. It comes to the state. It works its way down. I know that people are worried about the lack of water. And we're overflowing with water, everybody knows that right now, there's water everywhere. But I don't think a building moratorium is the way to go. You can't deny people the right to pursue their business, which is what developers do and contractors do. Again, we talk about smart growth. And a lot of people who come before the planning board often ask us, why can we allow these projects when we have a water issue? And we listen to everything, but the thing to remember is that the planning board does not grant water rights. The Board of Selectmen have the water and sewer. They are the water and sewer commissioners. And we work in tandem. You know, we have to listen to what they say, and they listen to hopefully to what we say, and everybody works together. So I don't think that a building moratorium is going to do us good for several reasons. We need the tax base, obviously. It would be nice if we could maybe change the tax revenue somehow and incentivize businesses, which is what we really need in Scituate. And I think that that question goes not toward building houses, but buildings like what's going on Country Way or the Toll Brothers property. I think that's what they're looking at. And you have to balance that very carefully, and it's really a checks and balance kind of question, and it's a dollars and cents question. And I know that we are not anywhere near our affordable housing stock. We're only at 4%. We need to be at 10%. So we need to think a little more differently and a little more out of the box on how to approach our affordable housing in a really straightforward, right from the shoulder type of way. We really need to address the needs for people to be able, of all types of revenue, to come to Scituate and be able to enjoy what we all enjoy here. It's a beautiful place to live. And I know it's getting expensive. I've lived here a long time, but watched how that rises. But my short answer to that would be no. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Back to selectmen, kind of along the water thing. Brown water obviously continues to plague the town, even after spending $22 million replacing 22 miles of pipe. It's my understanding that there's approximately 110 miles of pipe in Scituate. So kind of give us what you think, or what the town's plan is to eradicate the brown water, you know, how we, you know, intend to pay for it, or you know.
Sure.
Just fix it, Mark.
Just fix it. If we had all the money in the world, I think we could fix it. So, yeah, it's a big concern, especially this project was started prior to my joining the board. We are in the last phase of the $22 million project. It's finishing up this season down along Oceanside. And what that project was doing was replacing those pipes that were oldest and most corroded, where that was the thought of what was causing most of the brown water when the water was flushing through it. And the pipes were so old that they weren't strong enough to actually take part in an annual, if you will, or semi-annual flushing system, which is what all towns do, is they flush their system annually, but our pipes were so old that pipes were breaking when that was done. So our hope, we did have the water department in last week actually to talk about this. We've got a great water commissioner, water super, and really our message to him was, you know, let's make sure that we are being proactive and in front of this. Their feeling is that these pipes, this last section needs to be connected, some flushing needs to be done, and the goal is that, you know, most of the brown water should be eradicated after the system gets flushed through. So unfortunately, I think for people that still see it, that may be a few more, you know, another year down the road or so. So we need to evaluate and see if what else needs to be done in addition to this $22 million project. The number of calls have reduced significantly, so it has helped. It has helped immensely, but I still know there's a lot of pain out there in certain areas of town. There's another factor to the brown water that we were educated on last week, which is really that some of our wells, so a lot of our water is from a well system throughout town, and a lot of those wells have a chemical in them that's called manganese. And the manganese causes the brown water and the discoloration. It is very, very expensive to install filter systems at each well site. We are currently going through a project to install one on one of the wells in town. But if that's what it's going to take, if that's going to be the solution moving forward, that's what we need to do, then we're going to have to evaluate the financing of that as well. There are no cost estimates for that right now, but we certainly need to get through this last phase, see where we are, reevaluate, and obviously take that next step of engineering and identifying what else should we be doing and can we be doing to this water system to ensure that we have clear water. I mean, that's an essential right for all of us. And myself, as well as my fellow board members, really recognize it, and it's, I think, probably one of our largest concerns. So right now, it's, in my opinion, almost a wait and see how the next 6 months go, to identify, okay, what will that next step be, where we need to go.
So I apologize, I'm trying to look up questions to ask the town clerk.
Oh, me? That's okay. I'm
We
good.
didn't have any, so I was like, oh
I'm
my
good.
God. But they're all job interview questions, so I don't really want to ask you those. But I guess what I would say is, like, are there any changes that you would like to see happen in the office, or ways of communicating, or ways of, do you need new technology in that department, or, you know, what would you like to see happen in the next 3 years, you know?
How long is this program?
Right, we got 3 minutes.
I think the thing that most likely will come down the pike eventually, especially just for town meetings to start, is poll pads for check-in instead of the books. Now, I'm a big fan of technology. However, I'm also a fan of not wasting money on technology if it's going to be outdated in 3 years and we have to respend. So I have a call in, actually today, Jim Boudreau, our new town administrator, said, call Lynn Field, town clerk. She had a demo at their last town meeting, I think their annual last year, and I did talk to her today, and she had another company demo these electronic check-in, but it didn't sound like poll pads, it sounded like something different. And she said one company was great and the other company couldn't, they had to do the technology with the Performing Arts Center. So if we had our town meeting back at the gym, I don't know if that technology could be carried over to that area. So that's something that I'm investigating right now, but as a backup, because I am so type A, is I'd still have my paper check-in books just in case the technology wouldn't work. So that's another thing. The big thing that is important to remember, which I just finished up the LUCA project. So LUCA is the local update of census addresses. This is for 2020. This is not a town census. This is a federal census. And not to get away from the electronic poll pads, but I wanted to mention this before I forgot. In 2020, every citizen of the United States will get their federal census, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's like a quadruple folded thing that comes in the mail, and there's so many questions on it. And you ask, why am I getting this? Well, it's to keep track of our population, to keep track of our education systems. All kinds of economic information is needed for our United States. Anyhow, the local updated one is for the state, it goes by town, and so I just finished it. It was a project, and what I had to do was proof every address and street in the town of Scituate to what the federal list had. So I did that. It took a while, and then I thought that was, okay, this isn't too bad, I got this. You know what the worst part was? I was trying to figure out how to mail it back. I'm reading and rereading the directions because there's so many security guidelines. This is all called Title 13 protected. Okay, it's all private. And I'm going, what do I have to do? I have to put labels on this, but do I put the labels on the, Title 13 material, this is protected information. Anyhow, it went out today, and I made sure that the FedEx man came to my office to pick it up, and I didn't leave it on a counter because I'm a nervous wreck over it. But I have to tell you, the information that the federal government sent us with our addresses and what I had in our local, the annual census that you get every year?
Yes.
That information is put into a voter registration information system on a state computer that each one of us in my office has. And so if you have a teenager that registers to vote, they're listed as a resident, I registered to vote, and now they have a party next to their name. So all of those addresses were pretty spot on compared to the federal list, so I was pretty happy about that, I must say. So then what do? So once those lists were approved, and I've got all the new addresses in, like Ingrid Lane, things that weren't on the 2010 census, so to speak. Then I had to go to building, I had to go to planning, and I had to say, okay, what housing projects are coming up by the year 2020? So I had added Greenbush, because that now has a roof and walls, so that's gonna be all set by 2020. Do I add Booth Hill Road? No, because we don't know, it's not even permitted yet, so I didn't add that. So I did all these things, and it came down to adding 2 new areas on the map, so I had to look at all the maps. So, again, when I first started this Luca project, I was a little overwhelmed, thinking, oh my gosh, how am I gonna prove every address in the town of Scituate with a full-timer and a part-timer? But it wasn't as bad as they made it sound like in the instructions. And I was happy to get through it today. When that FedEx man came and went out my door, and they said, yes, you'll be getting feedback from us if anything's missing, I said, that's okay. So that is huge. So in 2020, you'll get your federal census, and if there's anything, in the meantime that you have a concern about, again, call my office. Be happy to answer any questions. But as far as anything else, changes come. I'd like to see people take a more serious look at their voter participation.
Absolutely.
If you want a voice in your world, then get out there and participate. And don't judge. There's a lot of, you have good and bad with every job that you do. And the people that show up to vote, the biggest, obviously, attendance is at the presidential elections, okay? Which is every 4 years, as we know. And you've got somebody that comes up to the desk and at the election at 7:15 before the polls close, and they say, what do you mean I'm not registered with you? And my hair blows back, and I just think, we're gonna find out where you are. However, you've got 15 minutes. If you're still registered in Braintree because you forgot to re-register to vote in Scituate and didn't get a confirmation that you in fact did register in Scituate, you're not going to make it to Braintree before the polls close. This is something that, as voters, you have to take responsibility. And you have to, just because you move and you tell the treasurer collector's office or the water department that you've moved to a different address, it doesn't automatically change your voter registration. Each department has its own changes that you have to keep up with, and that's your responsibility. So I would like to see people pay more attention, and if they have any questions, don't guess and show up on election day. Call the office. We're there, that's what we're there for. We want to help you to vote. We don't want to tell you on election night that, no, you can't vote. You got to go to Braintree, that's where you're registered now, because we can look you up. If I have somebody in my office till the close of polls on election day, we call them over, can you look up this person, do a statewide search? Yeah, they're in Braintree. So that's what I'd like to see, is people take an active participation in their community and pay attention to the issues that are going on and be responsible. That's what I would like.
Okay, thank you. So back to library. As far as kind of communication goes, especially between the schools and the library, do you think it would be important to have a school committee person assigned as a liaison to the trustees to ensure that the school curriculum is more aligned or coordinated with library services?
I think
Pat,
that's
do you want to go first? Or
yeah, sorry.
do you care?
I'm not really sure how I feel on that. There is communication, there was communication between the schools and the library that I was familiar with when I was at Gates. And it was the responsibility of the teachers to make sure the library was informed of what requirements were necessary and what the kids were doing. I don't know if it would be necessary or important to have a school committee liaison at this point. I'm not really sure on that. Carol?
Sure. It's also an interesting lens that I would love to chat with the board about, but there is a need for a stronger library school connection. The communication needs to be better. Very often kids come in, demanding things, and we've not been informed and can't gather, librarians can't gather the materials. So having that bond be stronger is very much a priority. I'm not so certain how to do it, but it's something we talk about regularly.
So when my kids were in school, back when Ms. Murphy was teaching, there was a librarian at each school.
I know.
So maybe would it make more sense that the teachers go to the school librarian and then the librarian is a connection to the town librarian, or are there not librarians at all the schools anymore?
I know Gates has a librarian. I don't know how the communication runs at this point. I know that when, as I said, when I was teaching, I did directly communicate myself and not through our librarian, but most of the teachers, most of the English department would do that.
And there currently aren't in the elementary schools.
Okay. Okay. So back to the selectmen. So it's my understanding that there's a group of towns considering partnering to expand sewer into the North Scituate, and I bring that up because as the Chamber of Commerce, there's a bunch of businesses up there, and the opportunity for growth is really nil up there. Do we think that that's ever going to happen? Where is it in the stages? How long do you think we might have to wait if it is in the word?
So this is a great opportunity that came to the town, I want to say, about a year ago. Hull is in the process of re-permitting, and they need to get a new permit for their sewer system and their sewer treatment plant. Without going into all the technicalities, they're looking for regional sharing, if you will. So Cohasset would send part of their flow to Hull to be processed. We would send it to Cohasset, so we would offset some of the capacity that we have here in our sewer treatment plant, which is great. And right now it is at the engineering phase. DEP has informally blessed it, so we're moving forward, and collectively the three towns are paying for an engineering phase and a feasibility study. We have not been presented with that yet, so the process is still moving along, but essentially what it means is that we'll be able to send a significant amount of our discharge to Cohasset or Hull to be processed, which will obviously alleviate some of the capacity issues that we have here. Certainly, if the easiest way is to connect North Scituate, it'll just allow us to bring North Scituate on much sooner, because capacity is prohibiting us from doing that right now. And I agree with you. I mean, the minute that we put sewer in North Scituate, that center of town will change drastically, and I think it will be terrific for the town. So I'm really eager for that to happen. Once we get that feasibility study, we'll have a better idea. I have asked our DPW director, what does the timing look if everything moves? It's really 2 or 3 years still out. Nothing happens quickly, and I think that's what's so frustrating to me, being new on the board for the past 3 years, is the amount of time and the processing for permitting and engineering. It just is, it's mind-boggling. So unfortunately, it won't be quick. But it certainly is a solution that we're looking at, as well as some other, opportunities that may be out there. We're searching for, is there a feasibility to do another remote, smaller treatment plant in the North Scituate area? Because we know that this one is getting to its limit. But there are also some processes that are being done. The Cedar Point project, which is cleaning up what they call I&I, which is water that goes into the system that doesn't really belong there.
Right.
And that should alleviate a lot of unnecessary water that goes into the system as well. So that will help with capacity as well. So long answer to your short question, but it's about 2 years away, and we still have not seen the feasibility results yet. So we look forward to that.
So they are looking into it, though, in a pretty serious manner.
Oh, absolutely. So I think we should see the report back in the next, I would think over the summer. because it's already in the process.
Yeah, okay, because obviously from a Chamber of Commerce standpoint, it's tough up there, and the businesses that do go in, they can't expand, and
It's really our biggest challenge as a town is our infrastructure, so we can continue to grow and support the services and the economic development of the town. So I agree with you 100%.
okay, great. All right, planning board, would you support reducing the size of accessory dwellings permitted? Currently, it can be about 40% of the original structure. Past proposals to reduce this were defeated, but,
Yeah, that's interesting. We just approved the largest accessory dwelling in Scituate last week, and it's big. And there's talk among the board that we perhaps had set a precedent that we didn't want to go for. They came in, the accessory dwelling has to be less than 40% of the overall major dwelling. This came in at 39.95%. It's as big as a ranch house that we all lived in when we first came here. I think I would definitely support that. We don't want these to be separate houses. We want them to be accessory dwellings where we can keep our parents or an au pair or somebody who needs housing. I don't think the intent was to make a separate whole house as an accessory dwelling, so I personally would support reducing the size of that.
great. All right, library. For those of you who don't know, there is a problem with the sound system in the new community room.
What?
Who is or should be responsible for fixing the problem? And is there any plan to get it fixed?
I had no idea there was a problem with with the community.
So who do you think, all right, but let's go with.
There is a problem. It's the HVAC unit that sounds incredibly loud, and I had a group I'm involved with, and we couldn't even hear the speaker when it turned on. It gets that loud. Part of it is structural engineering. It's very much a priority, and I know Jesse Finney, who works so hard, is front and center with it. And so rather than pointing fingers, it looks like we'll all own a little bit of it for its repair, but it will happen. Yeah.
I would love to comment on that.
Oh, sure.
I would not approve taking responsibility for any of that.
Okay, so more.
That's my vote.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
okay.
This was a beautiful project, and there were a lot of, whether it's the architect, the engineer, or the OPM,
Yeah,
somebody else is responsible for
Yes.
that, not the Scituate taxpayers.
yes.
So I guess maybe a better question would be then, we're definitely working on it.
Absolutely, it's
And-
very much a priority.
So somebody's working, who would be heading up that, do you know, or?
Well, there are regular meetings.
Public building commission.
Okay, so somebody is working on that, and we
Yes.
can expect to fix sometime in the near future.
Right.
So that we can hear Mama Steph and, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's see. One final question for Selectmen, and then I have one more for planning. So during the recent storms, there's been obviously flooding. I happen to have a business down in the harbor, and I'm lucky enough to be high enough, but there are a number of businesses down there that you had water going the back door and right out the front door, or front and back, and also several resident areas. So what do you think the town needs to do to address the sea rise? Should the town consider retreating from the coast and move inland? What about Front Street?
All that.
Basically, Moses, right? Didn't he part the seas?
Well, as I said in my opening statement, this is one of my graver concerns. I find it something that is bigger than all of us. But the good news is that Scituate is ahead of the curve than many of our other coastal communities. You know, we've already had an assessment done. We have a prioritization schedule of different, whether it's additional seawall repairs, whether it's different configurations of revetments to slow down the wave velocity, to mitigate the waves and the height that come into the harbor in that area, whether it's beach renourishment projects, all those different solutions are in the works, if you will. Some of them are in the permitting process. The Minot North Beach project is in the permitting process. That's a beach renourishment process where additional sand will come, and that has been looked at as a priority so that wall doesn't undermine. I'll get to the harbor in a sec. And the challenge is, no, because that was your focus, right? But the challenge is also with Scituate is that so much of our coastline is owned by private residences. And we are required by the law to get an easement to that property if public taxpayer dollars are going to be used to do any type of repairs or to do any fortification in front of those homes. So it's not as easy as people may think. We've been working with the Hummerock residents since I started, for 3 years. Meeting with them, public meetings, going over the solutions. They will not sign easements. So it comes to a point where you have to realize that if you don't sign those easements, we can't do the work. So we can't protect your home. So at some point, that's a decision that those folks need to make and come.
So perhaps they'll be moving inland soon.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why, the board, there's been no discussion about that. I just want to be very clear. But it's an option that has to be considered at some point, or else those folks, they're going to lose their homes. It's just Mother Nature. There's not anything else that we can do unless they allow us to go and do the work there, which is unfortunate, and it's not the way that anybody wants it to be, but that's the way it is. That's the law that we need to follow. So, one of the concerns that we talk about with Cave Retreat, well, we need to be mindful about the amount of acreage that the town still owns. Where would they retreat to? Where would we put those homes? So those are all things, when we're sitting here, identifying land and putting into conservation or arguing over what that use needs to be, we have to really stop and think forward and think about these situations and folks on the coast. If there's a relocation project that does ultimately need to be done someday, we need to have a plan as to where would we put those folks? Where would we give them that option? And then the harbor, I think we need to look across the pond, if you will, over to Europe, who have a lot of cities that are right there on the coastal line. They have a lot of different unique solutions, and we need to get in front of that sooner rather than later. So we have a coastal vulnerability report that's going on now as well that will assist us. Again, we're ahead of the curve. We have a coastal resource department that does a lot of this work for us that a lot of towns don't have. She's a tremendous asset, as well as the DPW engineers have done a great job with the seawall. So the harbor, definitely with the flooding this spring, was very disconcerting. How far it came up, I think everybody was shocked. I think the reaction to work with the state and to get the sandbags to prevent it the second time, at least from going to the buildings, was great. It's a demonstration of our really good partnership. But we need to understand with coastal geologists as to what can we do in the harbor to protect it. Is it a shield that goes up? Do they have... If you go online and you look, there are a lot of solutions that are temporary, different, walls that come up during storms and go down. Providence has a big wall that went up after the hurricane of 1938, to protect the water from coming inland way back in 1938. So that may be something that we have to take a look at, and it needs to be bumped up on the priority level. And make that, and we need to take a look at the priorities that the assessment report gave us, and in my mind, reassess based on what happened this past winter.
Planning board, what do you think is the best way to enforce planning board decisions once construction begins?
Well, first of all, we have to make site visits more often than we do. We need to make sure that our enforcement officer is going out and doing what he's supposed to be doing. And actually, we need to rely on neighbors to call sometimes and say to us, you know, I don't think this is what you approved. Can you send somebody out here and look at this? You're not snitching on anybody. It's very hard to reverse those. You know, once you build a 5-story house, it's pretty hard to have to tear it back down. I think that we need to be more mindful. We need to be, it's been my, when I look at past practice, it's that we tend to be a little lax. And that won't happen again. Well, I think that we've been proved that it always happens. So we do need to make sure that somebody's out there all the time. And make sure that, and if there is a fine to be enforced, that we enforce the fine and we collect the fine. Nothing hurts more than taking money away from people. That's really what bothers people more than anything. And we need to make sure that, like I said, the building department and the enforcement officer is kept very much aware of what's going on around town. So I do think we could do better at what it is that's not being done right now. That's a problem.
Last question before we do a wrap up is a general one for everyone. It's what would you like to see done with the Harbor Community Building and the site? So we'll start with Pat because we started with Laura first time around.
What do I want to see done with the Harbor Community Center?
The old Pier 44.
Yeah, oh, I know. I'd like to have it a restaurant again. Pier 44 was so wonderful. We went there every Sunday night with the kids. Well, I think it's, we own it. We need to use it in a manner that is going to benefit the majority of the town. I know that we're talking here about flooding. Obviously, that is going to be right in a flood zone. So I think we have to be mindful of that. I know it was well loved as a library, so I know there is some life in it. Not quite sure where we should go with it, though. It is a big asset that the town has. I'm not sure.
Okay.
My opinion would be is to raise the building and make it an open space. It has to be, part of the mitigation is that it can't be for one specific purpose, which I think people overlook all the time. Like, why can't it be a senior center? Well, for a lot of reasons. One is it's just not a very good building for a senior center, it's too small. But it has to be used for all populations. So my opinion would be is to raise it and make it part of an open space, a park. Sailing, boating, kayaking, something like that, recreational like that.
Well, I have to tell you, when the library was there, the classic joke was, we called the circulation desk the circulation bar. And we said, I'll have a gin and tonic as I check out my books here. But it leaked like a sieve. And we were always doing, you know, spit and Band-Aids kind of means to prevent the books from getting wet. And it also isn't necessarily, I belong to the library book group, and if it was low tide when we were having our book group, we had to move somewhere else. So it really is a building that's past its time, and I think it should go before the voters. It's a beautiful space, and it should be honored and appreciated, but its shelf life is expired, shall we say.
Well, I'm very endeared to Pier 44. I worked there for 17 years behind the bar. And I have to tell you, it's a lot of memories. Bartending, waitressing, it all opened many doors for me and helped me raise my children. But I have to say, people really miss Pier 44. And it's unfortunate because it's the best view in town. And it was a great restaurant. I had a woman whose husband recently passed, actually it was 2 years ago, and last year I ran into her and she said, when the library was there, she said, well, I went to go to the library and I walked past the bar and I started tearing up and all I could think of was you and you'd have our drinks ready and I had to leave. And I'm like, oh, no. But I kind of agree with Pat. I'd like to see if we could get some revenue out of the space. I always thought maybe if we could use the downstairs for some public purpose and then put a shed dormer roof with offices facing the harbor and use that as rental income for the town, rent out the offices upstairs, you could probably get in, I mean, I used to do my bar inventory up there, I'm guessing you could get up six offices up there. If you put a hallway on Jericho roadside, put a shed dormer roof on, windows, harbor view, rent that space out, income for the town, and have the bottom used for the public. If that can't be done because of the restrictions on the property, I'd like to see it be open space as well, used for recreation, you know, for sailing programs, longboards, whatever. I think that would be a great use of space too. It would certainly give the Scituate a pretty good view, wouldn't it?
So I think that's one of our last venues in town that the public, you know, really owns and needs to remain, you know, have access to look over and have a nice view of the harbor. I think what the harbor is missing right now are public restrooms, are parking, and a great visitor center. So, you know, sort of along the lines of combining an open space, you know, to your point, the building's not in great shape, you know, is it worth to keep standing? Is there a portion of it? I don't know, again, but I would love to see a portion of it become more of a visitor center and a type of public restroom area, so folks have a place to go, additional parking, some seating, some benches. There's a misnomer, we don't own the strip of land that's right in front, so in order to do you know, boating and different things off of that, there may be some restrictions from that, but certainly to make it a spot that folks in town and visitors could come and enjoy is something that I would be in favor of, and I'd love to see that. You know, we need to use the space right now for senior activities until the new senior center is built. So another reason why we need the senior center to be passed and built is so we can have a nice, beautiful view maybe someday in the harbor. So
It's
that's
a
what I
beautiful
would
view, yeah.
maybe we'll propose. Maybe I could do a little kiosk.
All right, so that kind of concludes the question and answer period. I do want to thank everyone. You know, public service is, it takes a lot out of people, and to have you 5 willing to do it, and some of you willing to continue to do it, speaks volumes, I think, to your character and the kind of person you are. And I think Scituate's lucky to have all of you on the ballot. And I do hope everybody gets out and votes. So I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of wrap up if you want to say anything else, and then we can all go in our merry way. So Pat, do you want to start? Sorry.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank the Chamber. I think this is a great opportunity to present ourselves. And I look forward to serving on the Board of Trustees. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. And I hope to be able to advocate for the library and all of its needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank everybody again. And just remember that your voice is very important. This is a democracy. We are part of a group that runs a whole town. As well as voting, please make sure you come out to town meeting as well, which is everybody's voice is heard. The oldest one in the country, I think, is here. And give us we're always open and willing to listen to people, happy to hear everybody's concerns, dismays, happiness, whatever. It's what it's all about, is listening to people and making sure what we do is best for our country here in our little town. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for hosting this, and folks at home, I hope you're watching and it was allowed you to think about a few things, but definitely come out. We're honored to have this right to vote, and not to quote James Curley, vote early and vote often, but please come out and come to the library. It's an amazing place. I had a meeting there with another group last night and sat out on the swing on the porch, and it was just a perfect summer night for it. So a community, it's a building for the community.
Again, thank you, Chamber. Appreciate the opportunity to come here and say a few words. I want to say about the town of Scituate, I lived here since 1977, and we are blessed to live in this community.
Yes.
We have a beautiful ocean front. We have a great community of just our citizens who participate and have a voice, and the people that I work with up at the town hall work hard. Every office has their own responsibilities, but we all work together for the benefit of our community, and we work really hard every day. There are a lot of underdogs up there whose voices aren't heard or seen, but trust me when I say they are doing everything, and they're hourly, every hour of the day up at Town Hall, and they're giving it 110%. So I look forward to seeing all of you on Election Day. Please get out and participate in this democratic procedure, or democracy, I should say. And again, thank you. I appreciate being here.
So thank you again to the Chamber, and I just laugh, when we say, we hope you will all come out to vote. We hope 100 times more tonight comes out to vote. I know you would, I just
I'm actually busy, I won't be
I
there.
was
Absentee ballot.
so sorry, just kidding. But yes, to the folks that are watching, please come vote. But I have been very honored to serve the town of Scituate for the past 3 years. People always ask me, how do you do it? Do you like it? What do you think? Honestly, I love it. So unfortunately, it doesn't pay enough for it to be a full-time job. If it did, I would love to do it even more than, full-time. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding to be able to get out there and speak to folks, to represent constituents, and to drive consensus on the board to get things done and to move issues forward. Because that's really what's most important, is there's so much work to do in Scituate. And it can be overwhelming at times, but as long as we stay focused and move forward and stay focused on the priorities and the things that are important to you, our residents, we'll continue to be one of the best communities on the South Shore. And it really is, as Kathy said, a fabulous town. I'm honored to serve. Please, I hope you will continue to support me and vote for me on May 19th. And I look forward to taking all these projects to the next step and whatever comes our way. As Kathy said, we have a great staff, and I love working with them and all the department heads and our new town administrator. So I think we're in a great spot, and I'd like to be a part of the process moving forward. So thank you, and thank you again for tonight.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.